Welcome to Behind the Armor, where we deep dive into the heart of what matters. I'm your host, Judd Shaw, adventurer, storyteller, agent of change, and speaker on authenticity and human connection. Join me as we explore the complexities of human connection, featuring theorists, scientists, and speakers. Our mission is simple: to inspire you to reclaim your true self and create genuine connections with others. Join me as we lay down our armor and live authentically. Hello, you beautiful people, and thanks for tuning in. Today, we're speaking with Danny Goldberg. Danny is a serial entrepreneur turned keynote speaker. After building an 8-figure business and losing both parents by age 25, Danny became motivated by the desire for more meaning, purpose, and happiness in the workplace. Danny left his business behind to pursue a more impactful mission, to make the workplace human. Today, Danny works closely with leadership teams to build a culture of care and effectively lead in a multi-generational workforce. Let's see what's behind the armor with Danny. From 8-figure businesses that you grew before most graduated college to helping organizations and companies build amazing teams, Danny Goldberg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. Pumped to be here.
So happy you're here. You know, what I wanted to get to is your story during the time before you became a speaker, before you were starting to talk about human connection, that Danny 1.0. And I understand that your mother and your father, you lost both at a young age to cancer. And I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And during that time, you were in a business, and that business didn't support you in the way you needed to be supported, which was really just connection and understanding, right?
Yeah.
And you found that you were not supported as a human during that time. What was that looking like?
Yeah, so I think it was very hard in the moment to really understand for myself what I was going through, and to express it verbally. My mom died when I was 25 years old, and my life came to a screeching halt. Everything that was important to me before she died and everything that became important to me after she died were two different Dannys. And in the moment, I didn't know necessarily how to express what I needed. But it was only as I started to work through that after she died that I changed. Like, life changed and I changed as a result. And as I started to navigate that, it became really difficult to go back to my old life. And after she died, like, how could my life ever be the same? And it was also, and you know, I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit, but it was the manner and how she died. My mom checked in the hospital 2 days after telling me she had cancer, and she never checked out. She was in there for 2 months, and she went through 3 major surgeries where every time they said, "We don't know if you're gonna come out alive." And those 2 months when she was in the hospital, it was hell. It was the most brutal 2 months of my life. And there was some gifts that came out at the end of it. But in the heat of it, life changed so fast and so viciously. And after she died, life would never be the same.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Danny. I could still feel the emotion of that, you know, years later. That feeling when that floor just gets pulled from underneath you and all of those values get questioned, right? So let's get behind the armor for a moment.
Yeah.
What were those values in Danny 1.0 that ultimately changed?
Yeah, maybe it makes sense to actually go back to even like Danny 0 before, because there was a shift that happened after my dad died that also laid the foundation for let's call Danny 1.0 and then Danny 2.0 after my mom died. If that's okay with you.
Absolutely. And to the point of that, it's important for the listener to know that we can have multiple dark nights. And each of those dark nights create a certain transformation. And I love that. So what was the OG Danny?
So growing up, I had I grew up really fortunately in the sense that I did not know how difficult life could be. I grew up like just as a smiling, happy kid. Life was good. And I count my blessings. Like I know, like I was very fortunate to be dealt those cards. My parents were extremely loving, supportive, and when I was 14 years old, I fell in love with boxing when I was 11 years old. And when I was 14, my dad and I would always have these conversations about life. And partly because of my dad's own professional journey, my dad was an industrial designer. He loved to design things, and I admired him. He would be able to take the back of a napkin, and sketch out an intricate product in 30 seconds. And I admired what he did. He got to travel overseas to go visit factory. He worked for a big public company, and he'd travel overseas. He'd be away for like 4 months out of the year, but not consecutively. He'd go for 2 weeks at a time to all these factories in China. And I just admired his life, even as a kid. And we'd always talk about life and career. And when I was 14, I was sitting in the backyard with him, and I turned to him and I said, "Hey, Dad, how do I build something great in life?" And my dad thought for a minute, and he said, "Find what you love and you'll build something amazing." And at that time, I loved boxing. The first day I stepped in a boxing gym, I was 11 years old, and it consumed me. It was my life. And every day I'd find I worked at the gym, cleaning mirrors, nothing too sexy or exciting, and helping the gym transition between classes. And then I had the aspiration to go and compete. So when I was 14, I'm sitting in the yard with him, and I said, I love boxing. Let's sell boxing gloves. And my dad started digging in further. And 2 weeks later, I had a company name, a logo, and I pulled together my money that I saved up working at the gym. My dad gave me some money, and I ordered a couple boxes of boxing equipment from a factory in Thailand. And like a month later, it showed up at my house. I'll never forget, a van pulled up with a couple of boxes, put it in my garage. And then that weekend, I told my parents, okay, time to go and sell the gloves. So we filled the duffel bag. And I didn't have a permit yet. I couldn't drive, and my parents would drive me all over Long Island, and I'd started selling the boxing gloves, and I'd tell them, I'll call you when the bag's empty. That's when you should come get me. And that business, it took off. And I always say, when I look back, my dad gave me the greatest gift because he believed in me, and he made me feel like I could really pursue my dream. And even I competed a little bit in boxing, and he really believed in me in that as well. But I knew deep down I was never going to become a professional boxer. So I was like, I better stick to the business thing. And the business grew little by little. And all of a sudden, when I was in college, I had a very legitimate business. I was providing boxing equipment all over the country, to gyms, to stores. There weren't that many combat sports stores, but there were a few. And I was making gloves for world champion boxers, and living my wildest dreams. And when I was a junior in college, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and 7 months later he passed away. And when he died, it was the first shift in me, where I shifted from building this thing that I was so deeply passionate about to really becoming hyper obsessed with how do I make the most money possible. And I didn't really think about money much when I was in college and when I was building my business. It was just I loved what I did. I loved going to hang out with these fighters, making the gloves for them. And my focus really became, I wanted to make money to take care of my mom, to try to fill that void. And I became pretty obsessed with thinking more and more about how do I make the most money to help my mom.
It's amazing that boxing can create polar opposites. And the experience of it gave you your start. It gave you passion. It gave you a connection to your father. My father is a Hall of Fame promoter, promoting the highest grossing boxers of all time: Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson, Shane Mosley, and on and on. And for me, boxing drove disconnection with my father because he traveled all over the world. It was the most important thing to his life. And it robbed me of both a relationship and the feeling that I had to be this, you know? And that really led to a lot of challenges growing up. And so I just find it so interesting, right? That the same thing could have a different perspective for each of us. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah, that's wild. You know, my dad, like he became, because I felt so in love with the sport, he became so entrenched in it equally. And it was an equal bond over like part the sport. We'd stay up late watching the pay-per-views, but part the excitement of building the business. And he was a designer, so he'd help sketch out glove ideas and how to improve the design. And he knew how to figure out the importing and getting the gloves here and things like that. So there was an equal combination of both like the sport itself and then the business. But my dad was an obese guy. He was fat. He was not in shape by any means. But he's like, "Oh, I'm going to do this boxing thing with you." So I don't know. In his late 50s, he gloved up and he'd come to the gym with me, and we'd spar each other. And then it would like continue when we go home. We'd continue bare knuckles sparring like in the kitchen, and my mom would be like, "You guys got to get out of here. Like you are just such a disturbance in this household. Enough with the boxing." But it was something that like we really bonded over in every facet.
Yeah. You know, even when you're describing those moments, right, with your dad, you can reflect on them with such positive energy that I can feel it. And yet at the same time, that subject, my body is getting warm. Like I'm sensing in my body because I have those opposite feelings. It generates those feelings of reminding of how disconnected and lonely I was because of the same sport. Interesting.
Yeah, crazy.
So you're that zero, that Danny OG develops into this, you know, beautiful child, loving family, great connection with parents, loses your father. And then now at that comes from, okay, now from passion and connection goes power or money. I need more money. And that 1.0 is this driven on needing more?
It's driven on taking care of my mom. Like I think the big shift that happened for me is I didn't care what I needed. I cared about what my mom needed. And like I knew deep within myself, no matter how much money I'd make, I would never be able to fill the void of my dad. It's like even a silly thought now, but really in the moment, it was like if I could just give her a little bit of money and ease her financial worries and ease her stress, it would be a win. And that's what led me to there's a few things that happened in between, but that's what led me to starting a manufacturing agency because I had all these connections and the know-how as it relates to supply chain from running my business. I was involved in another business that was in combat sports, where I was always running like the operations of finding the product, the manufacturer. And I said, maybe I could find someone that needs help with supply chain. And I found one customer, I found another customer, and all of a sudden, within 2 years, I had built a 7-figure business on the supply chain side of things. And all I wanted to do at that point was make more money to help take care of my mom. And that was really where my focus was.
Where was your connection with yourself? What were you doing, Danny, for yourself between dad and mom's loss?
At that point, like almost not, I mean, my life was my business. I viewed like the great wins was closing the deal, was getting another client, was making more money than I could have dreamed at 23, 24 years old. There was something that was like surreal about it because in the moment I think, wow, like my dad would be so proud. But it's crazy because when I think back, like now with the life I'm living now, my dad would actually be proud. And it's funny to see that shift now, but couldn't recognize it in the moment. And when my mom died, the thing that shifted was it was the first time in 5 years. My dad died when I was 20. So it was the first time in 5 years where I actually sat down and asked myself, what does Danny want? What's important to Danny? And the biggest thing that I came to realize only after my mom died was, holy shit, life is so fragile. Each day is a gift and not a guarantee. And like really understanding that, how and where do I want to spend my time? Because there's no guarantee I'll have tomorrow or next week or next month or next year or 5 years. And that's when everything in my life changed.
The Stoic principle of memento mori.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to catch and bring out something that you said about your dad. I thought he would have been proud of my 1.0, but now I learned that he would be more proud of 2.0. What about that?
Today, I'm so intentional about how and where I spend my time and the life that I'm pursuing, the life that I'm living. We're at 24, 23, 24, even 25 before my mom died. My life was about building a successful business. And I thought like, that's what life's about. And now it's like, I could do away with all that. There's so much more to life than just a career, than just a business. And I think that was, I did a lot of internal work after my mom died, just around understanding like, wow, there's so much more to life than just our career. And I think especially like I've lived in New York now. I grew up here, but living in Manhattan for almost a decade. And I think it's so easy to get lost in a big city where it's just career, next job, next promotion, more money. And I think a lot of people forget that like there's so much beyond just our career. And when we can pursue those things, we can actually live a more fulfilling, happier, and successful life.
When you lost your mother, you're in the job place, and I understand that you just did not have any support, right? It was about the work. It was about the job. And you're like, hello, where's the humanity? Where's the support? Where's the giving back to me to help know that there's a sense of belonging, that people understand what I'm going through? And when that's absent, it's a dark and lonely place. Is that how you felt?
Yeah. And so I was in my own business and I had a business partner, and we were building the business for nearly, at that time, nearly 6 years. And what I felt lacked was that I felt like all that mattered from his perspective was that I showed up, that I closed deals, and that I grew the business. And I had this epiphany, like I wanted to do more than just my business. And to his credit, perhaps, maybe, when someone is so focused and so driven in their career, someone else can maybe see that and harness them and say like, I'm going to make this person a quote unquote weapon. Like when you come to work, you're going to just work and grind, and you can help kind of focus them to make them this like sales machine, go get business, go kill, go get that deal. And when there's that shift, and that's what happened for me, that's what wasn't recognized. It was, you've changed and I don't like it, as opposed to you've changed and I need to support this change. And I think that that's something that so many people miss, because we all go through these seasons. I say it all the time, like 24-year-old Danny was a completely different Danny than 30-year-old Danny. And I know 40-year-old Danny will be different than 30-year-old Danny. So, as we think about the workplace, leaders need to understand the changing of seasons in their people so they can best support them. Otherwise, you might be able to like really harness and focus on supporting 21-year-old Danny when he's fresh out of college and is like, let's go build a business. But at 35, maybe I have a wife and kids, and my desires have changed. And as a leader, you need to recognize that to harness their new desires and the things that they want to pursue. Otherwise, they're probably going to be like, I don't feel seen. I don't feel supported. And that's what happened for me.
It sounds like honoring the authentic version and how that grows and develops. So your values changed, your belief system changed following your mom.
Yeah.
And the company didn't accept that new change that felt more authentic than it did before your mother passed.
Yeah.
And without that support, it drives disconnection. And quite frankly, I now understand my business. If my value system is different than that of my team, there's a disconnection and my team will not show up authentically.
Correct.
And in this time, you then came up with this framework, this concept of let's make our workplace more of a human place.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
When I say make your workplace a human place, what I mean by that is trying to bring care into all we do and understanding who your people are, not viewing them as a resource, but rather as a person with hopes, dreams, ambitions, desires, and perhaps some of them align with the job and the role and the task that they're hired to do, but perhaps they have desires that are completely different than that of just like the task. And as a leader, it's your job to understand what is important to your people. And when you do that, you can then honor and personalize how you lead to give them what they need at that point in their life. So, I mentioned like 21-year-old Danny, but if we just take an example of a person who's 21, a person who's 35, and a person who's 50, that person has all different needs. Like the 21-year-old might be, I want to build this business. I want to be the next CEO. And then at 35, they might say, I have a wife and kids. I don't want to be the CEO. I just want to come in and do my job. And I want time for my family. And then at 55, they might be more like closer to retirement and their needs might be more around, I want to come in, do my job, and then I want to go volunteer. So as a leader, if you can understand what's actually important to your people, you're able to best serve them. And that's what I mean by make the workplace human. Bring care and connection and depth and understanding what's most important to your people so you can best serve them.
You remind me of a team member that I had, and for a few years, I was trying to offer this person more money because the team member was a valuable member. But it wasn't seeming to drive the impact that I wanted until I had this realization that this guy is not driven by money.
Yeah.
He wanted to, go bike on, a beach at 4:00 and, he wanted flexible scheduling. He wanted more time when he then had his own child.
Yeah.
And, an ability to work from home on a certain day where his wife may be working and he can stay home with his son. And so when I realized that there are different motivators to what you're talking about, you really can dial in the harness the energy of your team, because now you're not seeing them as like one complete thing. They're all different parts of that. And showing up authentically, for me, gives my team permission to do the same. And when they do, it means I respect you for these needs, and these needs.
Exactly. You know what's crazy? So many people who work, I think everyone works in a team in some capacity.
Yeah.
And so many people never spend the time to ask their team, what's important to you? Why are you here? Like, forget, I understand you applied for this job. You're going to do this task and this is the money that you're going to be paid. Like, those are all, those are all things that are understood when you apply for a job. But so many people never take a moment to ask, what's really important to you? What are your aspirations in 5 years? Like, to really go deep and build a depth to understand who they are. People don't do that. I had a friend recently who was telling me, I can't get my the front desk at my company. They just don't seem to be motivated to do the job, and all they're motivated by is money. She made an assumption that they're just motivated by money, and I asked her, well, did you ask them what are they motivated by? And she said no. So she made an assumption, and I just tried to make her aware that making assumptions as a leader is one of the most dangerous things to do, and one of the easiest things you could do is just go for a coffee and sit down and share some of the things that are important to you beyond work, and open up and see if you can get them to open up about what's important to them. And then when you understand that, you can actually serve them. So that's what the work I do is all about. And I mean, there's so many stories about people who didn't make the assumption about their people and the impact that they were able to go and have. I don't know, are you familiar with the Erin Gruwell story from Freedom Riders?
No.
So Erin Gruwell was a teacher in Long Beach, California, and she became a teacher in like a very underserved community, extreme poverty, where the kids hated going to school. Many of them weren't able to read by the time they're in high school. They were told they'd be 6 feet under or behind bars by the time they're 16. And all the teachers in the past gave up on the students. So you look at this teacher and you say, she has every right to make an assumption that why would she be any different? But instead, she went in and she realized they all had stories, and she gave them these journals, and she asked them to write their own story, what brought them to their own story, and what life has been like for them. And they all started to open up in these journals. And then she saw that they started to read, they started to write, and for the first time, now they started to actually learn. And she started to bring in all these people who are Holocaust survivors to come and share their stories. And they inspired these students. And long story short, these students, she compiled the journals and turned it into a book and submitted it to all the book publishers, and everyone rejected them except one. And the book ended up becoming a New York Times bestseller. And the students ended up going on to live, be high-functioning members of society, all because she didn't make an assumption, and she really understood how to serve them. So that's what gets me going. That's what excites me, because I feel like that was the disconnect. I think back to it all the time. If after my mom died, I changed, and if my business partner at the time saw that and recognized that, and perhaps was able to honor that, maybe I wouldn't be here with you right now. But it didn't happen, and I know there are so many people that don't understand that and don't understand the power of bringing back that human side to the workplace and what it can do for their workplace. And beyond like the work and the ROI, I don't want anyone to experience like the hell that I experienced when I was sitting there after spending 8 years of my life building a business that truly I enjoyed the business, but I didn't enjoy the situation I was in. And I was willing to walk away from something that was so good, so sweet, that made a lot of money, because I wanted to go and do these other things that were so important to me. So, that's what excites me about the work I'm doing now.
Because you wanted to be seen and heard and felt valued for, this change that you were going through.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that how many of us lose great talent because we're not doing the kind of things that you're talking about. And, what resonated with me is that we all have a story. What's your story? And when we own our story and we can fall forward with it, we can really move mountains. What is the leadership modern framework?
Yeah. So the framework that I developed is all about building depth with your people. So trying to understand what's actually important to them. Personalizing how you lead. So once you understand what's important to your people, trying to actually personalize how you show up for them and make them feel seen for those things that are important. And then really empowering them, believing in them, helping them go on to build the life that they want to live.
It's, it certainly sounds like that can help attract and retain top talent. But as companies grow, as my law firm grew, and I should say, that, there's my law firm, and there's also the Judd Shaw brand. And when my team meets in the morning on the brand team, we do a connection card every day. We pull a random card, and it'll say something like, what's holding you back? What are your goals and dreams? How do you show up authentically? Where are you finding passion today? Mm-hmm. And boy, when you just ask a simple question like that, you learn so much more about your team. But that brand team is smaller than a lot of companies. In fact, it is. And so how do companies who are growing have the ability to cater to sort of in the way we are, connecting to each frontline employee.
Yeah. I think it has to be at the manager level. Like the manager needs to take the lead and an interest in their people to develop them, to support them, to really be there for them. And it needs to happen at a managerial level and a team level. And I think otherwise, like if you're able to harness, to really understand what's important to your people, I think you're able to create a connection that can be so powerful, so deep, that it is hard to leave that even for more money.
Yeah.
If you're a manager who just shows up and you have these tasks this week, you have these objectives, these are your goals for the quarter, you've given the person that you manage a job, and they will likely jump for more money, more support, more opportunity pretty quickly because they're trading a job for a job, where this person's trading connection, being seen, being valued. And that's hard to leave.
Yeah, right. It's you're offered X of thousands, whatever the salary is, and we're going to put 10 more thousand on it and try to get you. But it's like, yeah, but how are you going to still see me and hear me and make me feel as valued as I am at this company? That ain't worth $10,000.
Yeah, right. Maybe even 50.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes endless. I wouldn't leave a company that I really feel purpose, passion, a sense of mutual respect, a sense of understanding. Do you know what a coxswain is?
Mm-mm.
So a coxswain is they're in the Navy SEALs. They're also in rowing teams, and the coxswain is the person who helps navigate. On the rowing team or boating team, I'm facing you. You're the rowers, but I'm seeing the direction. And so I'm like, row, and watching the competition, right? And so they help navigate. They help set the pace, the tone. They help connect with their team in a way that their team knows that when that coxswain pushes them, they need to go. But they also know how to reserve their energy. And in the military, the same way, the coxswain is the head on that boat, that raft of that team for the core man who's helping navigate the direction. And I think of a coxswain as that manager, that in top-down leadership that you're talking about, giving the permission to the coxswains, the managers and the supervisors who have that team to deeply connect with their people, right? And then now what you're doing is the CEO, the founder, the partner, the leader, director, whatever you call that title, can fly at 35,000 feet, because down on that tarmac is that coxswain with the team.
Yeah.
And as long as you teach your coxswain how to connect authentically in the way you're talking about, it sounds like you can have some really highly performing teams.
Yeah, and I like how you use that they give permission, because it is the reason why the permission piece is huge is because the manager needs to create the environment within the team that it's okay to talk about things outside of work. Actually, in my old business, when I started my podcast, and that was the big friction point. That was the thing that led me to ultimately leaving the business, because my partner at the time said, you could do your podcast, cool, but I want you to leave the business, or you could do the business, but no podcast. That was essentially what it came down to. And I felt like I had to tiptoe around as I continued to do the podcast. And every time I would do it, every time I'd record an episode and spend the time and the hours, I started to feel this weight of guiltiness building up. And that weight became suffocating. It became, I'm doing something wrong. Uh-oh, he's calling me. Did I do something I wasn't supposed to do because I'm spending this time, even if it's after work hours? So you really need to give permission. And it's not, a lot of these things, the reason why it's human is because it's not, you can't tell someone, I want to know, you have permission to talk about your dreams with me. Come on, tell me. It needs to come from such a genuine place of care, of I actually care about you and I want to know what's important to you. And if you don't do that, no one who has a job is going to open up and say, yeah, like I really love I love this hobby of mine, or, oh, when I love Saturdays and Sundays are the best days of the week when I'm just with my family. It needs to be organic, and that you have permission to talk about those things, and I support you regardless if it's in line with me or not.
Right. Buzz, who's a close guy on my team, always reminds me that the buy-in is that there's authenticity, genuineness, trust, that you have my back and therefore I have yours. I'm investing in this company because this company is investing in me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll walk by, and it's funny if I'm at the law office, and suddenly there could be chatter between two people and it stops. Right? And I'm like, hey, what were you talking about? And I wanted to make sure that it was not work related, because if they said it was, they're talking, I'm like, then why'd you stop talking? You know what I mean? Like, that's the humanness of it.
Yeah.
That I'm giving you permission to recognize that in a day of 8 hours, 5 minutes of catching up and talking about it isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's a good one.
Yeah.
I love the idea of making the workplace a human place and defining what humanness is. Mm. And, to me, at least what I'm hearing, Danny, the root of that is that you, as the company or organization, are allowing people to show up as their true self. Tap into that purpose and passion that they're showing up at that job with, in honoring their authentic self. And boy, that can create some real momentum.
Yeah, and loyalty. Like, I think if you do that and you nail it, no one's leaving for $10,000 more. Like, you won't leave that, because that's rare to find in today's day and age.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. So I developed, my framework was the Connection Cure. The idea behind CURE, standing for conscious awareness, then understand, then renew and expand. And it's like almost, boy, if we combined our frameworks, right? Because yours is the top down. It starts with the leadership, giving permission to the coxswain to authentically connect with that team. And mine is what happens where the team don't know what that bring your true self to work is. They don't know what that looks like. Some of us have been wearing a mask for so long, we forget who we are behind it. And so the first question is conscious awareness. How are you showing up? Where are you showing up in the world that's feeding that disconnection? Understanding what is the root of that. Where is that coming from that we wear masks, even with sometimes those we're really close with? And then renewing our connections with ourselves first, and then with others. And then finally expanding those connections. Because when we expand the connections around us, we strengthen our ability to thrive in the world that we live, love, work, and play. And that part of the framework that I tap into with what we're talking about is that expanding. Because when you can go to work and that leadership is allowing you to do that, they're expanding your ability to connect not only authentically with the company, but with those around them that they work with. And I think that bring your true self to work is an important factor of, first, if you're going to be allowed the permission to do that, make sure that you're honoring yourself. Make sure that you're taking advantage of that opportunity, that company, that organization. Like, fire deep into the fact that what they're saying is bring your real and raw you.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think, it's I'm thinking about lawyers in general. I don't know why I can't, probably just because of your job, but your business. But I think about some careers where it's known, like the industry is known that this is a place where you're going to grind. Like, I think about law firms where you're going to work, crazy hours. How do you think in those types of industries where that's kind of the culture, do you think that there is a shift, or there can be a shift in those cultures where leaders can start to say like, hey, take a break, go spend the day with your family. Go spend that Thursday night, like check out, it's okay. I understand you have deadlines, obligations, but I see some people who are lawyers who are grinding. And I always think, when will the person that's the person that works at the firm that's not a partner, when will it pop? When will they say I've had enough? Or is there a world where like their leader would say, take the Friday, go do that thing that's really important to you, and would that make a difference? Because I see sometimes people start to have the thought creeps in. Maybe you're pursuing this thing for 10 years and you're like, I've been doing this for so long. Do I want to make change? Do you think that there's in those types of cultures where it's so intense, and that is the culture, do you think there's a world where those teams can change, those leaders can change, especially when that's how it was for them growing up?
That's a great question, and I appreciate it. I think that there will always exist those types of companies and organizations until those companies and organizations are losing so much of their talent, and they can't retain and they can't hire the best lawyers. Then they look and say, what are we doing wrong? But as long as they can continue to find the people they can grind, in the lawyers willing to work for 4,000 hours a year and bill that, they won't change. But here's what's okay with that. To me, I have met many lawyers who thrive on that, who feel valued, who love that work. I didn't. Coming out of law school, I knew that I couldn't work at those big law firms. First of all, I didn't graduate in the Ivy League and blah, 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 things like that. So a lot of times I knew that they had a different type of resume. But I also didn't want to work for them because I didn't want to go into an elevator at my own company and not know half of the people in it on the way up. I really wanted more of an intimate setting, so I went for a smaller firm. One there I could probably be heard and seen and feel valued more than I knew that those other companies or organizations would do. And so for me, I think the answer is go where it feels good and authentic for you. It doesn't necessarily mean that Johnson, Schwain, Lane, Lacker, the law firm of thousands of years, and you go there. If that's what you want, do you. Be you. And there may be a time where that value changes and you're going to have to leave because the company or organization won't leave. It won't change. And if that company or organization has lost you and they lose a number of people, maybe they will too. But if you don't want to do that, if that's not who you are, then going there to grind it out for money, for more power, to go to the golf club and say, I work for Schlein, right? That's the thing is like, now you're not authentic. Now your dark night will come because the cosmic bricks will slam down on you because you're not showing up as your real you. Not only does that organization not encourage or foster or honor it, it doesn't invite it. And so if you're willing to do that, and that goes against your core values, it goes against those things that are important, and you're not, that's where the issue is.
Yeah, I like that perspective.
Yeah. Danny, you do so much. I mean, keynote speaking, great consulting, and, you didn't have a lot of self-care when you were younger, but you had these transformations. So I ask, how today does Danny Goldberg most authentically connect with himself?
I think the how is driven around my perspective with death. And I feel like everything goes through a filter of this moment is fragile. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. And I need to prioritize the things that are most important to me today and not someday. And I feel like that filter is the thing that drives all the decisions that I make on a daily, regular basis. To choose to spend the time with you today, to choose to go on that trip, to choose to pursue the work that's most important to me, it's all based around the fact that there's no guarantee that I'll be here in 5 years to do these things then. And I feel like that's, when I look back at my grief journey and losing my parents, the gift in it, the thing that I am so grateful for, that I wouldn't trade anything in the world for, is the perspective I have around time. And I think it's really something like if everyone can connect a little bit with their own mortality and how fragile life is, it drives you to make decisions differently.
That's great advice from Danny Goldberg, who I so appreciate, speaking of time, chooses to spend his time with me today. I am honored and feel privileged, and you are my friend. And I wanted to ask you, would you mind if we can give a hug?
Yeah, of
I
course.
feel like I just want to hug you. Can I give you a hug?
Of course, I need a hug
Let's
today.
end that way. Danny, thanks so much. Yeah, of course. Danny Goldberg.
I want to extend my deepest gratitude to you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow us on your favorite platform or share this episode with a friend. You can also follow me on Instagram at Judd Shaw Official. A special thank you to personal injury law firm Judd Shaw Injury Law for their support in helping us bring this podcast to life. Remember, friends, authenticity isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about embracing our vulnerabilities, celebrating our strengths, and owning our stories. Until next time.